They say Starfleet was never built for war, that it began as a promise, that exploration could be its own defense. But every century tests that promise, and every era leaves some form of a scar. From the 12 Constitution-class ships that first carried the Federation's banner, to the 1,000 vessels that supposedly fought beneath it during the Dominion War. One question has never gone away. Where are all of the other ships? Because what we actually see on screen and what's said in dialogue doesn't make sense. Oftentimes, it's a handful of starships defending a territory thousands of light years across. Hundreds of member worlds, and yet only a few dozen holes visible in most crises. If Starfleet truly protects a coalition of over 100 civilizations, then what we're shown can't possibly be the whole story. Maybe Starfleet isn't small. Maybe it's just the only part we're allowed to see. Let's start with the math. The kind the shows never spell out, but the numbers quietly demand. In Best of Both Worlds, Admiral Hansen tells Picard that Starfleet can muster 40 ships. 40. Against the Borg. That's less than a single 20th century naval task force defending a galactic superpower. Later, during the Dominion War, we finally see real scale. 600 ships gathered in Sacrifice of Angel. 600 in one battle. It's never said that this is the entire Starfleet, only that it could be brought together for that engagement. But that's the problem. We never hear what Starfleet's total strength actually is. The scope of the fleet is deliberately vague, implied to be vast, but never shown in full. That ambiguity leaves room for both interpretations. Either Starfleet is smaller than we imagine, much smaller, like in my previous video I pointed out, or its power is spread so wide that no single camera could ever capture it. Consider the Federation's reach, roughly 8,000 light-years across, with more than 100 member worlds and thousands of colonies. Even assigning 10 ships per world would require thousands of vessels just for patrol and logistics. And that's before exploration, diplomacy, or science even begins. So if Starfleet alone can't possibly cover the expanse, then someone else must be helping. Vulcan freighters, Andorian patrol craft, Tellarite cargo escorts. The unseen fleets of the Federation's member worlds. But before we can estimate how many of those ships might exist, we need a method. A way to translate what's shown on screen into what must logically exist beyond it. So we're going to be using the math that I used before. Historians and analysts use what's called multiplier methodology, a framework for estimating total force strength when records or visuals are incomplete. It's the same logic naval historians have used when reconstructing fleets from partial logs or battlefield sightings. We start with what's called the canon baseline. It's what we actually see. The 40 ships at Wolf 359, the 600 at Sacrifice of Angels, the 12 Constitution-class cruisers mentioned by Kirk. We then move into the operational multiplier. Not every ship is on the front line. For each active vessel we see, several more are under refit, patrol, or reserve duty. Then we move into the visibility multiplier. What appears in a single battle or region is only a fraction of what exists Federation-wide. And finally, the attrition and reserve modifier. This one's a little bit new, but upon my research I found it. It's not often used, but it's interesting. Destroyed or mothballed ships still represent production capacity. In wartime, many are reactivated. When we apply these multipliers, the numbers shift dramatically. 600 ships seen on screen might represent 3,000 to 5,000 across the Federation once we account for refits, logistics, and regional deployments. That doesn't make Starfleet a hidden super armada, just makes it believable. Because a coalition of 100 worlds couldn't survive on cinematic numbers alone. Maybe the reason we never see it isn't because it doesn't exist, but because, somewhere along the way, Starfleet became the mask that hides 1,000 local banners. When the Federation was founded in 2161, not every world surrendered its fleet to Starfleet. Each founding power, Vulcan, Andoria, Teller, and Earth, brought its own ships, its own command traditions, and its own definition of defense. Starfleet became the face of the Federation, but beneath that banner, those individual fleets never truly disappeared. They simply became quieter. In Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Spock arrives aboard the Surak, a Vulcan-built warp sled shuttle. Decades later, Unification names the T'Pau, part of the Vulcan National Merchant Fleet, a canonically confirmed organization. Even in Deep Space Nine, we glimpse Vulcan science vessels operating without Starfleet markings. These ships reveal a pattern. Vulcan maintains a merchant scientific fleet independent from Starfleet. Logical and self-reliant. The Andorian Imperial Guard never truly vanished either. Its long-range vessels were integrated into Starfleet, while home system patrols remained planetary. Though unseen in TNG or DS9, the Guard's doctrine survived. Disciplined, rapid response forces ready to mobilize under Starfleet command. Tellarite design dominates Federation logistics. Their ships, freighters, tugs, transports, may not bear NCC registries, but without them, the Federation's supply lines would collapse. Teller provides endurance, not glamour. Earth still maintains local defenses, such as the orbital platforms and the Mars Defense Perimeter, which was destroyed by the Borg in 2367. These assets weren't Starfleet vessels. They were Earth's own, operating under planetary authority. Peaceful on the surface, but never undefended. Together, these founding fleets form the Federation's invisible foundation. Small individually, immense collectively. By the 24th century, Starfleet was the Federation's face, but not its backbone. Behind the explorers were transports, research craft, and freighters quietly threading Federation space. Every major world operated ships under its own institutions. Merchants' guilds, universities, or local governments, forming the arteries that kept the Federation alive. We need not look but to Starfleet itself for examples. Canonically active in Unification Part 1, the Apollo-class transports like the T'Pau operated under Vulcan registry. They weren't Starfleet vessels, but they served the Federation's commerce and science. And when a few missing ships went unnoticed, we had proof of scale and autonomy. Cordon in the Industrial Worlds is another example. In Journey to Babel, Cordon Prime, rich in dilithium, logically maintained freighters and escorts. They sustained the warp economy that made Starfleet possible. Invisible and indispensable. If we look at Trill, Bolaros, and Kate, canon confirms their cultural and scientific prominence, though not independent fleets. Local survey craft and research vessels are consistent with their roles, supplying Starfleet with data and personnel. Beta Z is yet another example, though one on how they have to work together. Beta Z's 10-hour fall to the Dominion proves how peaceful many worlds were. Its transports and shuttles fought hopelessly, showing that the Federation's infrastructure was built for cooperation, not war. Together, these ships form an invisible web. Vessels built for peace that become critical in war. Or to put it another way, Starfleet explores the unknown. These ships maintain the known. Canon shows us hundreds of ships. Logic demands thousands. So let's apply the methodology that we go with. With canon visible, we see about 600 to 1,000 ships. That's what can be confirmed on screen. If we look at the operational modifier, that would put it at about 2,000 to 3,000 ships. That would be active Starfleet and the ones under the local banner. Spreading that Federation-wide, we now have about 5,000 to 7,000 vessels. That's Starfleet and member worlds, along with what other civilian ships I can't think of. That's not headcanon, it's logistics. Because a coalition of 100 worlds can't survive with fewer. When you consider what we see on screen, it makes sense that this hidden fleet exists. Though to be fair, I don't think Starfleet had to hide its size. It just never needed to show it. When you think about it, Starfleet isn't ideal. They wanted to push a message. They were attempting to expand and show that everyone could be together. Everyone could fly under one banner. So it's important that when the galaxy looked at the Federation, they saw consistency. To the public, one emblem was simpler than 1,000 flags. When war came, that mask lifted. Member worlds converted industries overnight. Teller's freighters became troop carriers. Bolaros refit its factories for escorts. Vulcan stripped cargo pods from merchant hulls and armed them. Each world contributed, one navy expanding into 100. Civilian convoys, like those lost at Tyra, kept the front supplied. Science vessels became scouts. Utopia Planitia, San Francisco, Antares, and local shipyards across the Federation turned dormant hulls into fighting ships. In my last video, I talked about how Starfleet losses may have numbered in the hundreds. But when we consider this new way of looking at the universe, by late 2375, Starfleet losses may have numbered in the thousands. Yet new fleets would keep arriving. That resilience proves the scale we never saw. The Federation's true armada was every ship that could move under its flag. While we never saw it on screen, it's quite possible that Andorian ships, Tellarite ships, and even Vulcan ships would have fought alongside Starfleet equivalents. And this could explain the differences in what we hear on screen, the number of vessels versus what's actually shown to us. Because we, like the galaxy, only really see the Starfleet vessels, the Starfleet hulls. We don't see the real power behind the machine. The local banners, local ships that all fought in every battle. And when peace returned, they quietly went home. The war machine dissolving back into commerce and exploration, leaving behind the illusion it had never existed. When the war ended, the Federation still stood. Its survival wasn't luck, it was design. Starfleet explores, planetary fleets defend, civilians sustain. Unity isn't symbolic, it's structural. That's how a society that rejects conquest can still endure total war. We call it the secret fleet, but it's not secret, it's unseen. The strength of the Federation lies in its invisibility, in the thousands of ships that don't need recognition to matter. When we see the Enterprise, or the Defiant, we're seeing the tip of a vast cooperative engine. Engineers on Corridon, merchants on Vulcan, pilots on Andor, scientists on Shrill. Each one a thread in the same tapestry. The Federation was never one navy. It was 1,000 voices speaking in harmony, each carrying a part of the dream. That's why it survived the Dominion, why it outlasted every empire, and why, even in its quietest moments, the Federation remains the most powerful force in the galaxy. Not because it can fight, but because it can stand together.